Oh, jeez. Oh, my God. What's that, Baines? You got a bell.
That was my phone. I'm sorry. It's blowing up.
My phone.
My phone's blowing up.
Oh,
Which,
wow.
I mean, I got one text.
You're a popular guy. That's a Tinder result, Baines.
Yeah, it's not bad.
More like Grinder. Oh.
Hello and welcome to Quackast number 385. I'm Ozone Ocean, and today we're going to be talking about drawing the line, which is something we'll explain. But first, I have to introduce the people. Okay, so we have Tans. Hi, Tans.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, she's back.
And we have Baines. Hello.
Hello.
And we have Pitt. Hi, Pitt.
Hi, you guys. How
Broke
you
my
doing?
fucking
Hello. Hi. This is me.
Hi.
Oh my God, it's Pitt Face. Hi, babe. What happened there? Someone let out all the air from Pit Face
I gave birth.
to another Pit Face.
Hey, little Pit.
Now you'll have to do the whole Crackcast as Mini Pit.
Yeah.
That's what Pit's Face child will be. Will be called Mini Pit.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about drawing the line, which is Tanzarine's news post of a little while ago. We're talking about say if you're depicting tragedy or something awful or something beautiful, mainly something awful. Where do you draw the line between the kind of horrible things you'll depict, and for what reason? Are you depicting this horrible thing for a serious reason, or are you just exploiting it for whatever? So that is Tance's idea. But first, we'll have to introduce the feature. So here is the feature. Take it away, me. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Savannah Cat Adventures. Savannah Cat is a little cutie. She's perfectly comfortable in her house with all the other cats around her, getting fat and fluffy. But the big wide world outside her window beckons, so she waddles her way out the cat door and begins her adventures. It's not a smooth road. She encounters many hazards and makes some new friends on her journey. This is a hilarious comedy comic strip. It's full color art, cartoony style, updates Mondays, Thursdays, I think. I'm not sure, but it is quite a few pages. It's growing slowly. There's a few pages so far, and it's a nice little comic. It's very family friendly, so everyone can enjoy this. It's not too naughty in any way. It's just a good, fun comic, and it's genuinely funny, genuinely hilarious. I love it so far. I want to see what other adventures Savannah Cat will get into. I'm not sure if we know her name so far. It's just Savannah Cat, so she hasn't got names like her little cat mates do in the house that she comes from. But we'll see. Anyway, I hope you enjoy Savannah Cat Adventures. It's a fun little comic. Oh, it's by Rachel87, actually. Oh, yes. I forgot to mention that. Rachel87, fantastic creator. And it's rated E for everyone, so read it. And that was our feature. Feature. Okay, so we also have the music coming up by Gumwallis. And tonight, Gumwallis has given us a funky little track. I'll explain it right now. This week, Gumwallis has given us a theme to Ink LaRue. Oh yeah, melodic vocals tied with a gentle pop funk sound. This is a sexy track that doesn't take itself too seriously. It just wants to have a bit of fun. So take it away, Gumwallis, with Ink LaRue. And that was our music by Gumwallers. Thank you so much for that, Gumwallers. Okay. Drawing the line, Tance. Where do you draw the line?
Nowhere. Okay, no, I do.
No lines. There's no boundaries. Tance is out there.
Where do I draw the line? Well, first of all, shall we explain what line we're talking about?
Oh,
Because the idea of the whole post that I just read again because I forgot most of it is that when we are handling certain issues, certain subjects in our webcomics that involve very extreme imagery, shocking imagery, or scenes that depict things that are very traumatic or very violent and things like that. How far do you go depicting or even including these things in your work, and why? And what is the purpose? When is it overdone? When is it exploitative? And when isn't it? That's like and it's not a rule. It's a case by case thing, in my opinion. You can't just say like this is the rule, and if you cross that line as the rule says, then you are being exploitative and you should feel bad or things like that.
Exactly. Like all rape jokes are bad, which isn't necessarily true. I mean, if you're making fun of rape, then
rape jokes are bad, guys.
Yeah, but say someone who's been a rape victim or whatever is making some kind of intelligent point about rape, and she's doing it through humor. So you can't say all rape jokes are bad. So there's that. All rape jokes that make fun of rape, yeah, but there are, case by case basis, like you're saying. So even for things like that, yeah, all abortion jokes are bad, But then there's reasons you would do it.
All abortion jokes are good.
Of course.
Or say miscarriage jokes, which is another whole big take on it, and that could be quite that awful, like traumatizing for someone who experiences it. But then again, someone who experiences it will have an interesting take on that idea. So yeah, there's that. So
yeah,
it's a case.
So the thing is that if you do draw the line at all, when and where and in what context would it be justified to expose your audience? Because you are exposing your audience to something very traumatic that they wouldn't otherwise experience if they weren't reading or watching or generally being consumers of your art. So when do you do it and why? Because you have a responsibility not to expose people to very disturbing imagery without some reason to do it, except the thrills and give.
Unless you're just going for outrage, like a certain movie director. His humor at one point in time.
That story is so old, it's got jellyfish fossils on it.
I was just saying, you've been doing this since the last Quackast. Okay, full disclosure. We recorded the last Quackast and this one back to back. And Oz has been like, oh, this one guy that I shouldn't be talking. Just say his fucking name. He's not Sauron or whatever. What's the guy from Harry Potter? That guy.
Voldemort.
Yeah. Voldemort. Say it.
Yeah, okay. James Gunn.
Say my name. James.
Oh my god, we've invoked him.
Now we're doomed.
Princess Alpha?
No, I said something else.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
But like, for example, I'm thinking harsh imagery, like what you would see in, like, I'm trying to think of a movie title. What's
Schindler's
this
List.
trauma exploitation movie, Cannibal something?
Holocaust is
Cannibal
you're trying
Holocaust.
to say?
Well, Cannibal Holocaust, yeah.
Why would you do that? And are you justified in doing it?
I Spit
that is
on Your
again
Grave, which is one that was very graphic in its depictions of sexual violence and physical violence. But also, I don't know. That is an exploitative film. So that's problematic, that one. Yeah, but
when you're talking about something like Cannibal Holocaust, though, that's something that is supposed to be exploited. That's something that an audience is expecting to be exploited.
Yeah. I just get another like title in my mind off the cuff with extreme imagery. That's all.
Well, I Spit on Your Grave. That
I haven't seen it, thankfully.
Yeah. So that film is a film that depicts sexual violence, physical violence, all that kind of thing. And that is very exploitative. And it's not doing it in a way like Cannibal Holocaust does. Not really. I don't know. It's just doing it in a more purient kind of way. So, yeah. There's that. If you're bringing up exploitative films.
This movie by Uwe Boll about the actual Holocaust. That is it's about Auschwitz. I don't remember the title. But if you watch, like, it's almost unbearable to watch because the images are terrible. Accurate. It's accurate. It's treated very respectfully. And that's a nice maybe example in the sense that, and from Uwe Boll of all people anyway, but it's treated very respectfully, but you can't watch it more than once because the images just they are worse than horror in the sense that the way that they are. Even if you see the trailer for the movie. So.
Yeah, it's quite affecting. Should we get to reader contributions to your post? Should we?
Well, before we do that, maybe the one thing that I want to say, because I don't know if the contributions answer that. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
That in the post I listed 3 questions that could help estimate whether, including super traumatic stuff in your story is necessary or not. Whereupon then you make an executive decision of whether or not you want to have it in there for other reasons except, the needs of the story. So the questions are, number 1, what am I trying to do with this scene where something absolutely terrible, horrific, and traumatic is being displayed? What is its function? That's the one question. 2, is this scene or sequence necessary to the plot? If I take it away and swap it with something that is still terrible and horrific, but on a smaller level, will my plot fall apart? Will my story lose impact? And number 3, what will the story focus on and in what way? The victim or the perpetrator? Who will be the one the audience will be called to coexist in the course of the story? To coexist with, I meant. I forgot that. In the end, who will end up being glorified as superior to the other? So, and these are not my questions. They are general guidelines on that sort of thing used in narrative classes.
Yeah. Okay, to determine the positions of things, and yeah. So, did our audience answer those questions? I don't think they did, but
probably not. Yeah,
probably not. But I wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a good way to frame the whole discussion in, and to have these points in mind when you're depicting such things or utilizing them in your work. You have to really think about in terms of this stuff if you're going to use it in a good kind of way. If you're going to handle it sensitively, you have to keep them in mind. So,
one thing that you do say in question number 2 that I like, that you at the end is, like you said, is it necessary for the plot if I take it away and swap it? Will the plot fall apart? And then you say, will my story lose impact? So that can be even in the world of, like, horror exploitation type. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that is the point. Like, the impact is the point. Like, to have an emotional, like, to shock people is the whole point.
Yes, of course.
The scene of the moment. Yeah, no, you kind of said that, right? That's what that calls to mind instantly to me, is like movies where, like, Evil Dead or some kind of classic horror movies that people still kind of talk about because of those a few shocking moments.
Oh yeah. That gets reaction because of the subject matter it uses and the way it treats it. Right, so let's dive into this, because we don't do reader contributions as much as we used to do, because we're assholes. But let's reverse that trend a little bit and let other people have a chance to be assholes instead. Yeah.
Let them be heard.
Oh, we'll still be assholes. There's no escaping that.
Yeah, that's it in common.
Yeah.
So, all right. This person used books, Vicky Boatwell. She is not an arsehole. None of these people are assholes. They're all fantastic. And she does... she does use books, which is her comic as well, which is a detective thing, soap. There's a whole lot of stuff. It's a really, really big work. Anyway.
It is the singular most scandalous comic on Drunk Duck.
Yeah, it's shocking.
It's got... She crosses all lines.
Like the mature rating wasn't enough. We had to make a new rating for her comic.
Yeah,
like mature plus. You have to be 80 to read it.
She crossed so many lines that I wove a Persian rug out of it. It's just like a tapestry.
You made it. All right, that's enough shenanigans. It's enough.
Okay.
She's so far over the line, it looks like a dot.
Jeez. All right, so use books. So who should we have reading? Should I do it? Should I do it? Okay.
Sure.
All right, so here she is. Use book. She says, "Modern effects have injured the horror genre. I feel like showing the suggestion of horror used to be partly because technologically limited, what could be shown realistically. But with technology, that can showing any horror in detail removes the horror. It can take it out of the fear camp and launches into disgust. I have never liked full-length horror chiller, but I'm addicted to horror anthologies. There are so many episodes of series that horrify me on a deep level, and I will not watch again. Newer anthologies almost failed. Episodes, to me, are the CG-focused body horror displays. It's not scary, just gross, and my mind instantly drops the suspension of disbelief at that point. It becomes less immersed in the plot of the characters, and more like watching a carnival act with the, neat trick. I wonder if it's all digital or if they are using practical effects. I don't like drawing, writing horrific things. To be honest, it has happened in used books. Last time I wrote something really disturbing, I knew it was because I unleashed an antagonist who would be nothing less. Staying true to character is top priority, but my skills are at a level of that old black and white movie technology. I am unable to show the horror on a technical level. I I lean towards the suggestion approach. In fact, I put finishing touches on a horrific story angle. It's all aftermath, no victim to be seen. I worry, on the rare occasion I veer towards the line, it cheapens my work, or makes it seem like a bid to be edgy.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, horror
So I
is
get
crap.
what she's
No, she's not saying that at all. Go on, Pitt. Sorry.
you were going to say.
Oh, so she's saying like she can't really depict horror in its full effect, you know. So she's not going to do like bloody bodies splattering and detailed skeletons and guts flowing out. So she go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, see, that sounds more like, and it's probably meant this way too, just more of a reflection of her own references, obviously. Like she's not a big horror person. She's not a big visceral horror person, so naturally she's not going to really like detailed stuff. Like when she started off, she made the distinction between like actual viscera. It's not actual viscera in movies, but like I assume she means like puppetry or like props and stuff like that. She makes a distinction between that and CGI, saying that that the CGI is too detailed, and that might be how she feels about it. But for me, I find a lot of the prop horror to be more detailed than CGI. I mean, like you watch The Thing and stuff like that, and that's wonderful. Those are that's excellent work. That's far more detailed than a lot of CGI is, and I'm kind of the opposite because CGI to me tends to be lazier. Generally, there are some really good examples of CGI, and ironically, some of the best examples of CGI combine both CGI and puppetry. But
that's
anyway. But
yeah.
So she's saying that the CGI takes her out of it because it's detailed. But I think it's more, I don't know if she is really putting her finger on the reason why it does that. I think she just kind of more has an aversion to that kind of thing. So I think she's probably not going to like it either way.
Right.
Like maybe it's having the reaction it's supposed to have, but to her, specifically, that would be a bad thing.
Yeah. And it's just not one that she enjoys, which is totally understandable.
And
it just makes her not a judge of it, I think.
And she's saying...
Sorry.
All right. I was trying to say, and she's saying part of the reason that she does have a line there is not just because of her reaction, but because she doesn't feel she has the skill to render that kind of stuff. So... so in her own work. Part of the reason she has that line is just because she can't do it. She doesn't feel that she can, so she doesn't go that far. Which is an interesting thing. So technical limitations.
When you're working on your own work, then.
Exactly. Like she says, I don't like writing horrific things myself, to be honest, but it happens. You know?
Yeah.
But because she can't do that, then she does what she can. So she shows the aftermath rather than the act a lot of the time. So that's where she has the line. It's pretty good.
I have to say though, because I follow her comic, it's extremely rare in her work, definitely. But she did include some pretty vicious torture scene. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who is, binging through her archives. And it was pretty intense. And, when you express something in your style, within your style, it doesn't matter if someone would do it like more 3D or more realistically or, less abstracted or whatever. It's your style, the way that you sketch and draw things. And within this world that you draw, this was a pretty jarring and extreme scene. Like you just go, oh, okay. I wasn't expecting that because it's books, and usually we don't get that sort of thing. So there's also that.
Yeah, she doesn't shy away. She says she doesn't shy away when she feels the story really calls for it.
Yeah, she's honest with herself with what's needed in her story. That's what really counts. I mean,
well, next up is Uzi and Ilshin. Yeah. Pitt, you can make fun of me. You can do the ozone.
I will read it out. Yeah, ozone, ocean. That friend.
Oh God.
This is only the serious comics, obviously. PKTA. I've got a new roommate. That's going to be really bad. PKTA shows death and war of adult human male soldiers. Something we've been taught to rationalize as acceptable in civilized societies. Oh God, that hurts my neck. The time with men who are bad guys. But depending on how you look at it, killing is always pretty severe. The deaths are no better of us than a woman or a child. I've always wanted. You actually spelled it. Wanted. Wanted to show a bit of that in Pinky TA. Pinky Tao.
Pinky Tao.
I'm really sorry to my new flatmate. Please don't judge me on this. It's a radio show. I'm really
Don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid.
But English, he's not going to understand what's going on.
You'll think,
okay.
Ireland has visited me.
We have been blessed.
Yeah, so that was something in Pinky TA. I that was one of my I don't know. A lot of people do consider that a line. If you're like showing war, shooting people, killing people is just part of the thing. There's no line about that. There's no reason to have a line, you know. And especially if a man dies. If you have a woman or a child, like in a war scene, then it's horrific to show a woman or a child being killed in a war scene. But to have a soldier, then fuck, who cares? It's just another.
He might
that's
even
what he's
add a little
for.
Wilhelm scream over it or something.
Exactly.
I think again, though, it depends on how you show the killings in the war. Like if you take a Saving Private Ryan, the D-Day scene in the beginning is all about soldiers getting mowed down, basically, and nobody takes it as okay, a bunch of soldiers getting killed because of the way that it is shot and focusing and really going in the micro level of how each particular soldier is feeling, the terror, the fear, the desperation and all these things. So
it does happen, but commonly that tendency is to trivialize that. Like if you talk about an Ireland film, Commando.
Commando.
Thousands, hundreds, millions of men.
Not only the bad guys die anyway.
Yeah. Millions of people meet their end at his M60 machine gun that has unlimited bullets that keeps on firing and firing and firing and firing and firing. And they're pointless. They comically fall from buildings. It just happens. So in Pinky TA, when there was like a death of a soldier, who was obviously a bad guy, well, not a bad guy, but the enemy, I wanted to show that it was not something that Pinky just thought, kill him, whatever. So I wanted to show that there was something, significant about a death. It wasn't just part of the scenery.
Yeah.
So that's a Pinky TA thing. I'm not saying everything has to be that way. That's just was my line in the comic, not to have death as being trivial. So,
yeah.
For me.
To be aware of the death. That's not what it's like in Putrid Meat. All death is trivial in Putrid Meat. Everybody fucking dies. You don't even know it.
Life is meaningless in Putrid
That's
Meat.
the baseline of Putrid Meat.
It's sort of the opposite. Death has meaning in Putrid Meat. Life doesn't matter. There's actual gods.
And that doesn't matter
in the
either.
death
Nothing
world.
matters. Putrid Meat doesn't care about you. You fuck off.
The death world has gods to it, though. Well, a god, at least. So that's something different.
The death.
Well,
Imagine
the
a
afterlife
story. Oh,
in-
sorry. Okay.
In Putrid Meat, there is actually a god of death.
What?
That
There is.
woman. That you
Isis,
forgot your own
yeah.
comment. Yeah, there you are, Isis.
You are assuming quite a lot.
She's not a human character.
Like making his own pantheon around her. Oh, she doesn't have a real life, but he's like, she must be a representative of the afterlife. She's just like, no. I don't know what happens in Putrid Meat when you die. It's probably not good. It's probably not. You get tossed into the verticorp station is what you do. That's all we really know. You get tossed into, which is even more unceremonial. You know, you get tossed into this pit where you just decay with a whole bunch of other bodies and get turned into fertilizer. That's what happens in Putrid Meat when you die.
What about the necro
Sounds about right.
priests?
The necro priests don't necessarily have anything to do with the afterlife. They are the guardians of, not to sound like dumb, but like the guardians of the earth, but like they're kind of crooked assholes. They don't have anything to do with you when you die.
All right. Well,
You tried.
well, I'm wondering. I still don't know about Isis. You know what? Apart from being
She has nothing to do with you when you die. She was, this isn't the Putrid Meat cast. I'm not gonna get it. Don't you sit there and try to convince me that my own comic cares about dead people that it kills. It does. But if you want to believe that, you can, because I don't know either. Maybe they do. Maybe.
All right. Well, let's move on to Mr. Baines.
They're like proselytizing
yeah,
sort of religious comics. Pit tracts.
the pictures left in men's urinals all over the country.
That's right.
Place their wife in herself. Okay, so let's go on to.
So I said
Baines.
I'll blast through this. I just babbled on. We could even skip it if you want. But
Well, if you don't
I'll
want
have to-
your stuff as part of the thing, that's
yeah, forget it. It just doesn't matter.
seriously.
Oh, well, I left a link for Tance, just for Tance, and she didn't respond. Now that I read it again, I remember a link to the powerful scene in Dirty Work.
I
The
chickened
reaction
out.
to a jail. Yes, it's pretty upsetting. It's actually
chickened
not. It's
out.
pretty funny. But
Oh, is it?
okay, yeah.
All right.
So I said I can remember a couple TV shows I watched as a kid, sitcoms that were usually comedies and corny, emotional. But then they would like do a molestation episode. Like that would happen.
Different strokes. Yeah.
Different Strokes. I remember poor Dudley.
You even remember the character who got lost.
Later to survive Friday the 13th Part 5, but that's another story. And Family Ties both did molestation episodes. I wanted to say molestation episodes. I don't know if I'd call these good or bad. I didn't like them as a kid. I would just switch off mentally, not feeling disturbed. I just didn't want to watch it. It just makes you tune out when it's not what you're expecting. The tone of the series you're watching. And then I said there was a horror novel I was reading as a youth about some kind of haunting or demon. In one early scene, a young, mean girl in the hospital, I remember, she was sharing a hospital room with the sort of main character. She's assaulted by a demon, and it turns her hair white and drives her insane. It was so off-putting that I didn't continue with the book. But on the other hand, I still remember it, like decades later.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want to read the book again. I don't remember what it was called, and it killed the book for me. But I do still remember that scene.
And that is a thing. Oh, sorry. I didn't see that it wasn't. Please continue.
I'm only like a quarter of the way done. I go on and on. And then I talk about the movie Misery, which apparently toned down a big scene. I don't know if I should spoil it, but in the book, it's horrible. It involves the protagonist's feet. In the novel, much, much worse. The filmmakers changed it purposely for the reason that, Tense talks about, or that we're talking about here. That people would tune out. It'd be too far. It's like too far over the line, and people would not like the movie, and they wouldn't remember the movie.
Okay, so
they would just vaguely remember this horrible thing they saw instead of the big hit.
That because that was shown in every single movie preview when the movie actually came out. So,
and I guess the book doesn't matter so much. So in the book, I think she actually cuts his feet off.
Right.
Yeah. So they didn't want to do that in the movie.
In the movie, she puts a block of wood between his legs and smacks it with a hammer or something. And...
yeah, gee willikers, or whatever she says.
Yeah, and I remember probably all of us have an experience with something that went too far. And then the only thing that you remember is the scene and nothing else. And that defeats the purpose. I remember... And I remember the author because I have avoided all her books ever since. Like I got because I'm a big fan of whodunits, and it was a book by Tess Gerritsen, or however it is that she's pronounced, and it was about this serial killer that was also a surgeon or something like that. Anyway, he could do surgical stuff, and she has a freaking whole chapter where she describes in minute detail how he slowly kills a person with a scalpel. I'm not going to go into the details because they are disturbing even to list, let alone the imagery that she used and everything else. I stopped halfway and I dropped the book and I don't even remember the plot. And it was about halfway in. It wasn't in the beginning. And also, she forces you to be in the killer's head. Like, he takes extra pleasure in it. And oh my God, it's awful. You feel dirty afterwards and disturbed. So,
Cross the line.
A little bit.
Yeah, I used to feel.
And then the writer you'll avoid now altogether. You'd never read anything by that writer again.
Never.
I feel that way about a lot of anime that was released in the 1990s, in the early 90s, mid 90s. It was very much that kind of ultra violence and sexual violence. It was just way over the top,
Yeah.
It's just extreme. These days it's not so bad, but yeah, back then, oh my God. And you'd think, no, I'm not going to watch any more of this series. You'd watch a couple episodes and you think, oh, no, Angel Cop, no way. That had an awesome cover. That lady with enormous metallic shoulder things and a huge gun, and oh my God, the terrible stuff in that series is just awful.
I remember, I think this was from Angel Cop. I won't go down memory lane. There was a scene from there. I'm pretty sure it was from Angel Cop. This girl gets blasted away and her brain explodes. But shit, I think it was Angel Cop. I remember that for a long, long time.
That was bad. That was traumatizing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we should move on to Paul. Eberhardt. Tance, you haven't had any reading out yet at all.
Yeah, I was hoping to avoid, but anyway. Because I cannot do voices. So the violence, he says, in Steve Erickson's Malazan book of the Fallen series, which I otherwise like a great deal, is sometimes a tad more graphic than strictly necessary, even for its gritty atmosphere. Can't really blame the author, though, since he is a trained archaeologist and makeup will be nearly as brutal as historical battles and campaigns really were. So he seems to reckon that credible fantasy warfare has to match that level of grossness. If only the rest wasn't so well written and laced with a great deal a great sense of sometimes quite subtle humor, and that's probably why I forgive him as a reader. He adds, the thing with my example is that the terror part never loses its impact or shock value because it is very inventively done, so it can actually cross the line in the way referred to in this news post. There are other cases like the Hard 4.0, say, where the action, violence, etc. just loses its power because it's so overused. At least that's the way I remember it. Same goes for beauty as well, even if it's admittedly harder to cross a line there, but there's certainly more than one or two Disney sequences that manage to. And that's it.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about beauty and that. You can saturate it. If everything's too beautiful, then it becomes chintzy, and Rococo is an excellent example of that. It's awful. It's
I like Rococo.
Really? I like Baroque. See, Baroque is restrained and beautiful, but not over the top. Whereas Rococo says, okay, we'll take your Baroque and we'll add pink and extra flowers and some lace to it and some gold effects and just keep on going and going and going until you can't take it anymore.
Basically, my idea book is exactly what you said about Rococo.
Really?
Yeah, we're gonna make it super heavy and super overloaded and impose on everybody and feel that we have sprung from some grandiose chamber of hell, the stages below. And Rococo is like the same, but a butterfly. So I prefer Rococo.
With 7 tons of gold plating added. And bows.
Well, not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily get gold plating.
And bows. It's like Hellenistic art versus Hellenic art.
I like both, so I can't.
All right. We're done here.
You are not my friend anymore. Like, how dare you?
Disagree on points of artwork. Oh my God, Tans.
How dare us?
All right, so, well, Used Books has come back again. Oh my God, the return of Used Books 2. And she says... Oh, goodness, I have to think of it. Okay, she's going to be British now. I can only do 2 accents, British or American. And she said... Or an Australian.
You're American?
Badly.
They really do. So you do, like...
Sleazy?
Really perverted American, yeah.
Well, just like any American.
Like you're feeling your nipples a little bit as you read.
I am. It feels fantastic. I'm not going to be worried about crossing that line, I can tell you that. So Book says, well, my specific examples of episodes of things I will not watch again due to disturbing me include The Twilight Zone, It's a Good Life, a season of MacGyver episode with rampaging ants, and another episode of MacGyver with a chemical that causes rapid aging. I'm very conceptual in what disturbs me. I am also disturbed, more angered really, by bad writing, particularly deaths that serve no narrative purpose, pathetically poorly written characters, and animals used as cheap story devices, especially when killed off. Sitcoms that do that with some poor rodent pet and play it for laughs. Screw you if you write that stuff. Family show or family whatever. So the thing is, the line is relative, like Oz said, because Oz is a genius, and you know I have to quote everything he says.
Quit! Don't masturbate on the Quackast. That's like we're gonna get.
Like Oz says, the tone has an effect on where that line is and the nature of the material. The audience has expectations. Monty Python can play volleyball with dead guinea pigs if they want, but it doesn't belong on Full House. When I watch something like MacGyver, I'm not expecting a body count. So if it turns into that, it is disturbing. It would not faze me at all if I was watching James Bond. So
Yeah.
yeah, there we are. It's relative. You've got to sort of your context, really, where these things happen.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
the line depends on what you're writing for, or what your thing is. Like, I don't really want to see like disturbing necrophiliac death rape scene in Typical Strange. So
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. If you don't see it in Putrid Meat, you're disappointed.
exactly. Exactly.
Like, it's been 2 pages. Why is there no? Why have I not seen it?
Jonesing for it, man. Jonesing for it.
Yeah.
And in the same way, to go the other way with the beauty, you don't want the Disney version, the Disney reboot of Schindler's List, for example.
Oh God,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, that would be offensive too, wouldn't it? Like, you just.
Of course it would be, because
Yeah.
it completely clashes with the context, the expectations, and the gravity of the subject matter. So
Yeah.
It's a good point about beauty. It's not appropriate in some contexts. It really is not appropriate. Like, you don't want to be too beautiful about a disgusting, bad subject, because you will paper over it and make people glorify it, perhaps. Just
Okay. Is that what he meant by beauty? What Paul meant by beauty?
No, but we're taking it in another direction.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I wasn't quite sure what he meant.
No.
But I think I know.
for example, I don't know if you. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, you go on. You start talking first.
Please, I'll add later. I won't forget.
You have the conch.
All right. Fine, go on.
Okay. Anyway, I'm not. I don't know if you know this little anecdote, but the musical Les Miserables, when it was being written, received a lot of criticism that they were making a musical out of such heavy work as Les Miserables, that it would trivialize it and make it look silly. Of course, once the musical actually opened, it completely, not completely, but to a very big extent, dispersed these worries. But it was a very real risk, because if you have people in the gallows dancing around, then you absolutely miss the point, even if the music is beautiful.
Yeah. All the other a lot of other musicals face the same thing. Sweeney Todd, Oliver, which is Oliver. A lot of different things like that. Phantom of the Opera is another one. So, and sometimes they do cross the line and become too beautiful, or they are inappropriately beautifying something that shouldn't be. So yeah, it is a real line there. I'm not saying like Oliver is fantastic, because even though it does beautify such a horrific kind of situation, the whole that 19th century stuff with people in a workhouse being forcibly separated from their family, all that kind of thing, going in with a bunch of street thieves, a horrible abusive partner who kills his wife. I think it's his wife or whatever. It has that kind of stuff. Yeah, girlfriend. It has that kind of stuff. But because it's a musical, it brings this story to a whole different audience without really lessening, the message. So
yeah, because the way that the story, the songs are constructed, and the tone of the song, you can have pretty grim songs out there, and songs that tear your heart to pieces if you listen to them and you listen to the lyrics So it is absolutely possible to have a musical that is about tragedy, a musical that is about very hard scenes and subject matter. But those that are going, the people that are going to create it have to have the caliber, first of all, to do it, and also be respectful of the material. Like, for example, I'm thinking Disney's what's the with the church? How my brain just froze.
Okay, Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yes, thank you. It is completely unbalanced because they oscillate between this beautiful iteration of the story where you see the grimness and you see the risk and you see the horror and everything, and then it has the gargoyles on the other side. That
Yeah.
like if you take out if you excise those tumors that are the gargoyles, you have a completely different movie that is on a completely different level and possibly could perhaps not even be for kids if you know
Okay.
if you would like this. And I think that the big level of the criticism and the flop that it was because it had this dissonance in it.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. So they trivialized it too much in that way. Well, let's move on to Bravo. And Baines, could you give us your Bravo?
Oh, yeah, it's been a long time. Bravo. Use books. Hits on something here. It's a Good Life is 1960s TV. Nothing is explicit and everything is inferred. But it is so disturbing. Don't you know? Mm-hmm. My sister can't watch Little Girl Lost because it is that disturbing. I can't do this voice anymore. I lost it. You don't need graphic anything to do something really visceral and disturbing and scary that really hits you. And then there are Japanese gore films or the old Gordon Lewis gore movies, which are blood and gore everywhere, but just stupidly silly. And sometimes you can tell someone just went to the butcher's shop and got a bunch of guts and threw them around.
Oh, gross. Again, putrid meat. But, okay. So, okay, he's saying, alright, in those early films, they can be very disturbing without showing anything. Yeah, they can be, because it's all in context.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, graphic displays were the line they didn't cross, I suppose. But they still talked about the subject matter, which, that's fair enough. You don't need to show something in order to be horrific or to approach a horrific subject. You really don't.
Yeah, it's true. But I hear people reiterate that a lot when this kind of subject comes up. And though I do agree with it to an extent, like, yeah, it's like some really effective horror out there is stuff that doesn't just beat you in the face with like, oh, this guy got disemboweled and stuff, like, for sure. But I think when people simplify gory movies to like, oh, it's scary, therefore it's not good or it's not entertaining, I think that's kind of short-sighted. Like, yeah, like, you're not interested in it. That's totally fine. But I don't think that means to say that, like, if you do have something implicitly gory, then the line that's crossed. Like,
no.
And that's the subject here, is when do you cross the line? Yeah. And so it's like, I don't know. I think I totally get what people are saying when they bring that argument up, and I do agree that, yeah, don't beat your audience over the face with things, but, like, it's just kind of, I don't know. I'm just kind of sick of hearing it a little bit.
Well,
although I agree with it, that's the weird thing.
You're right. It's just because something has gore in it, it doesn't mean it's schlocky. It doesn't mean it's bad.
Mm.
That's just the line they chose to cross. That's all.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, like, to take it a little bit to the webcomic realm, I'm thinking of Amelia P's King's Club, which is a great webcomic. Everyone should go read it. And it has, like, it's definitely 18 plus, although it is also definitely not porn. And the thing that she does there, and I respect her a lot for it, is that she has rape in it. And it's not treated like in a casual fashion or cavalier fashion. Okay, let's have people getting raped left and right. It's very, every time that this happens, it really adds to the story, because the story is about the mafia and how the mafia wars happen, and how how gender factors into this war, and how people within this whole grid. I'm trying not to spoil anything. That's all. And how people that are on opposing sides use the worst of the worst to overpower each other. And although there are some elements that you see to make it feel graphic, without actually being as graphic as it could have been. Like, there are a lot of things that are always off stage, but just enough to give you the full horrid and ugly impact.
Yeah.
And it's one of the very few webcomics and movies that I have seen where I can actually see it being less if you took the scenes out.
Okay. They're needed more than superfluous.
Yes.
They're not there for shock value or for...
No, it feels very realistic somehow. Although there are many elements that you could say go towards her narrative, like she has this plot about two warring families of mafia, and then there is this mercenary group that sounds a little bit overpowered in certain areas, and it is all about them. They are the King's Club. But the grittiness and the way that she handles the subject matter makes it feel extremely real.
Yeah.
Without it being exploitative. Let's have people, get raped just for the raciness of the matter.
That brings up something for me. So that's a line I won't cross. In Pinky TA, that will never be a factor, that kind of sexual violence, because that's not a kind of story element that I want in the comic, and I don't want Pinky as a character to be defined or weakened by that kind of, that kind of thing. As many characters are, it's popular. It has been popular in the past to have female characters, especially main characters, defined by sexual violence in some way. And fair enough, that might have a reality to it, because, a lot of women have suffered that issue, but I don't want my character defined by it, because I do think that's a bit overused in popular culture. So yeah. So that's a line I won't cross in my comic, just because of that. Because she's my main character, and I want to keep her being.
She's your little girl.
True. True. I don't want it to be limited, and I don't want to be cliched in ways that, messed up.
And actually, I think that the way that your world is somehow a better world than the real one in many ways. So I don't think it would fit very easily. Something like that.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Well, next up we have Mindcat. Mindcat. Oh God, Mindcat. We got to talk about Mindcat's comic because Mindcat is new. So
welcome, Mindcat.
Mindcat should have a Twitter feature then.
Oh, Mindcat's been around since 2004 to 2011, so Mindcat's not new. But Mindcat's just hasn't contributed much. Okay.
But still.
Yeah, Mindcat has been around since 2006, so Mindcat's not new at all. But
Just haven't seen comments before.
yeah, Mindcat's new to the forum. So there we are.
A lurker, a little voyeur.
Yeah. $99.99 is the comic Mindcat is currently doing. But Mindcat has done Insult to Injury in the past, Demonic Malarkey, and Universe number 7. So there are many, many good comics by Mindcat. So, Pitt, do you want to be Mindcat?
Sure. Personally, I believe the graphic displays of horrific scenes can be necessary to get a point across. See? Movies like Blood Diamond portray extreme violence, and I believe the shock factor was needed to wake people up. Now, people want guilt-free diamonds, and some good came out of the terrible events that actually happened. The way I see it, there are some people who would say, no, that's too graphic, hon. There are other people who would experience horrific events in their lives, and they are thinking, no, there's others will know. Look, now others will know what it's like.
Yeah. Okay. And that is true. If there are quite horrible things that you want the world to know about, like, the war in Iraq, there was a famous movie, The Hurt Locker. So that's meant to show, like, more of the reality of the situation that the soldiers face in their day-to-day lives. So they felt they had to show horrific things. And so it does have a point. Slumdog Millionaire, which is another very popular movie about an Indian beggar in India going on a game show and getting, thousands of rupees. But they show in flashbacks, they show his terrible life that led up to him being on the show and the horrible things that happened to the children around him. And so and this movie was like a wide release, all over the world. It was a super popular film. And now people are more aware of what beggars on the streets of New Delhi go through. So it had a good...
Of course, you know that Indians hated that movie, right?
Yeah, everybody does hate a movie that portrays their country in a bad light. So there's that.
But it really didn't, because it didn't diss on the Indian nation or...
No, but it shows to the world in a big budget film that there are beggars who have their eyes burnt out with hot spoons.
Like if they do like a similar movie about Greece under memorandum, and they show the actual horror that exists here and that now is under the surface, it would be a very good thing for people to see. So,
oh yeah, it's these kind of things should be shown. So there is a reason for crossing lines. There is a good reason.
Like in Without Moonlight, I have child murder, and I have kids killing other kids, and things that like killing that goes beyond your typical soldier versus soldier sort of thing.
That's pretty horrible the way you have depict things. You're basically the James Gunn of the trunk. You
Don't say that. Yeah, but the reason I and actually those scenes for me, they were very hard to draw. Or the reparation scenes, all these elements. But if you don't draw it, then
it lessens the impact.
The impact of not the impact, the experience, because you want to your audience to be immersed in that reality, so that then the way the characters react is perceived, and the stakes that are perceived are within that reality. Yeah. So you have to have your audience experience the whole of that horrific routine, in a sense, because that's the thing. Yeah, that was the routine over there.
You're using them to set the tone and create the context within which the characters are going to react, which would not have the same meaning or context if it was something that was pulled back from, so to speak. So you've got to get that reaction from the audience somehow and get them in that mood to understand what the characters are going through. So you've done that by showing a child beating another child over the head until his skull splits open, blood and brains splurt out. And pieces of skull are embedded in his mashed up brains.
I didn't have the camera zoom in on his head. Okay.
As we see the ocular nerve hanging, the eyeball swinging.
It speaks volumes, though, that you would describe it this way. That means that the job was done, even though actually draw it that way.
The orbital bone exploding under the blows, the vicious blow. No, I'm not going to continue. That's disgusting. We're going to change the rating on the Quackast. Yeah, so there is a good reason for doing that kind of thing. Thank you for that, Mindcat. You represented that side beautifully. Right, so next up we have Mr. Bravo again. Oh my god, Baines, you're getting a workout this time.
Indeed. The actual battle sequences in Glory and the Patriot finally got early artillery's presence on the battlefield correct. No neat little explosions, but bouncing cannonballs that take out everything in their path. That being said, Gettysburg captures the battle without any gore at all. But people die too cleanly. People do not grab their belly and fall down. A line of men shot by canister at point-blank range would be shredded into a stack of flesh and gore. Yeah. They added gore into gods and generals, and it hit home harder just how nasty the 18th to 19th century battlefield because people didn't die cleanly. But some of the best combat action is in old movies where you don't see the guy get shredded, but the reaction of the guy next to him, or from the classic Breakthrough when William Campbell knocks out the tank and the guy tells Hi to jump, and he screams, "I can't! I got no legs!" You don't see anything, but it hits you in the gut.
Yeah.
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 What you imagine is the worst, usually.
Yeah, so, that comes back to what Used Books originally said. You know, there are technical limitations. In a lot of those old films, yeah, sure, there were ratings, okay? And they weren't allowed to show certain things, but in a lot of ways they couldn't because they just didn't have the technology to really convincingly show a guy with no legs without it being funny. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. When it doesn't come off well, it does come off as funny, which is also legit. I mean, once again, that's not to say that it has no value then. We're talking about shock. You know, line is in regards to shock.
So they couldn't show it, so they had to do it in another way, which is the reaction shots. So you can say, oh my God, that is so disgusting, I can't take it, you know, and that becomes the horrific thing, rather than showing some people very unconvincingly running around with fake blood all over them, which, you know, wouldn't work, and their shock value wouldn't be there. So you're just showing this person reacting, and you're imagining the terrible stuff in your head. So they're forcing you to create the picture, which works in its way. So unless you have the ability to do that, then it's probably a good idea to go the other way and not show it. Not because it's bad to show it, just because it's not going to have the desired effect if you can't do it right. So there's that.
Or you could, sometimes the human imagination is worse than what you would depict.
Yeah.
People will horrify themselves more with just the premise. So that might actually be efficient in certain contexts.
Sometimes it is. It just comes down to how you want to use it. Like, what do you personally want to do with it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I also think that there might be also a level of familiarity, in the sense that if you are depicting something horrific, which, though generally anyone would be able to picture, even in a larger than life manner, then it might be more efficient if you don't show it and you let them think and imagine how it would be. But if it's something that is more or less alien, it's a situation that is not usually referred to or whatever, maybe then you have to show it so that the audience will have the stimulation, the experience of it first, so that they can be.
Yeah.
So the Thing, you really had to show that in all its gory disgustingness in order to get the full impact. You can't have reaction shots of that. It just would not convey the true horror. So you really do need to be able to show that and show it well. And it works.
Absolutely. That was part of it, because that was like, The Thing is very much in the realm of body horror, which is really big in Japan. And it's funny because when you ask a lot of people about, some things that terrify them, if they're familiar with a lot of different expressions of horror from a lot of different places, 9 times out of 10, a lot of Japanese horror will come up, because there's just something about it. But oftentimes Japanese horror is also body horror. And I find that a lot of times when people say that they like subtle things, they prefer subtle horror, they'll also say that Japanese horror scares them. In Japanese horror, it seems subtle, but for the most part, it's not really. I'm going to sound like I'm talking in circles if people don't know what I'm talking about, but it's weird. It's kind of like this double thing that I see going on sometimes. But yeah, The Thing kind of falls into the realm of body horror, and I think it's really easy to cross into that line of uneasiness with that. Like another good scene that's another good example is the original Alien movie. And if you think of the scene where I brought this up time before last time, where the chest burster bursts out of the guy's chest in that one scene. If they didn't show that, would that have had the same amount of impact? I mean, the way they... Right. And granted, that scene... Again, scenes aren't in vacuums either. They're surrounded by other scenes. And so, like, everything leading up to that scene where the chest burster comes out, it's all the more impactful because of what was happening before it. The tone before it. And you're not expecting it and stuff. So,
no, that's a good.
I don't know. I guess I'm trying to say it's in the way you're set up. Yeah, that kind of shit. Anyway, I'm
rambling.
It's the context that matters.
Yeah.
That's it.
And some of us just want to see gory shit. I'll be honest. Some of us just want to see that shit.
Yeah.
We like it.
It has fans just for its own sake. So, next up we have Jinjoke, who made his mark originally showing gore. I mean, that was what his whole comic was about originally. His first comic on Drunk Duck, oh my god, that was a really gross comic about mutants bursting into the world, devilish demons, and ripping people apart. So yeah, he was all for that before he became Mr.
Really?
3D. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So he changed his stuff.
Yeah.
So,
You changed, man.
Yeah, he's like the Peter Jackson of Drunk Duck.
So I went all respectable.
Okay, the James Gunn. No, I'll cut that out. All right, so who can we read Jinjoke? Pit or Tance? Okay, Pit.
I just went with Mindset. I just went with Mindcat.
You did? Okay, Tance.
Yeah. Okay. I have little issue with showing things. The trick is in the how much you focus on it, but there is always a line. I found used books these days for going near her line interesting. I've done a few short stories that have come close intentionally, and how they make me feel was interesting in itself. One was a somewhat cheesy horror, and I was going for cheap shock value and used cliched characters. The racism and brutality didn't bother me to write, but I was concerned about people's reaction to it. The other one was about a guy finding a friend dead and reading his suicide note, where the dead guy reveals he was a pedophile. The intent being that I wanted to question how it would make you feel to lose a close friend and learn the truth of them. I always intended it to be more text than visuals, and assumed that approach would be easier for me to do the visuals for. Writing it was hard. I wrote the suicide note in the first person and wrote away the character's darkest secrets and desires. And he continues, it made me feel dirty getting into the head of a character like that and trying to make him sympathetic. It's very easy to demonize people, so I wanted to portray something that would churn my stomach to learn of a friend, and to write the other character trying to reconcile that revulsion with the affection they felt for them. I have no idea if I pull that off, but for me, that was the line, because it wasn't trivialized by OTT action or cheesy effects.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now that's a mind game there.
Yeah, that's a totally different level. That's a hard line to approach, let alone cross, to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, he has my respect for that. Although I'm not going to his way. He can be a trailblazer by himself and do it well. Yeah, well done, Jinjo. That is a very taboo kind of thing.
Sometimes when you write your evil character, and I think that the closer it hits to reality, the worse it is for the writer to actually write a believable and not, mustache twirling villain on the issue.
Oh yeah. So yeah, especially if you're talking on those particular subjects. Jeez.
It scares you a little bit. I mean, at least I have been scared sometimes when I'm writing certain Nazis and how they feel or how they are thinking. Even when they are not actually vocalizing their thoughts, I am thinking of what they're thinking in order to draw their expressions.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do scare myself. Like that I can't go there. I can't think how they are thinking, at least to an extent.
But in Ginger's case, you also have the problem of the way society looks at those subjects, especially now. We talk about these, how people are perceived because of what they write or what they say. Oh, you had a pedophile character in your comic. You must be a pedophile. There's that kind of aspect as well. So you have to approach it knowing that, even though you don't advocate this thing at all, you're actively, showing it as a bad thing. automatically people make assumptions and all that kind of thing. So, yeah. That can be a problem. So it does take a brave person to approach that for many different reasons.
Yeah.
Next time we have Iron Scarf. Oh my god, he's very British. Pitt, could you do Iron Scarf with a British accent?
So you can pick Kim Lester afterwards.
Oh damn it! I forgot about that.
Right. I remember drawing a scene which the writer described. He's kind of Australian too. Described as a guy whose chest had exploded. He's very Australian. I approached it the same way as I would draw a car. Put a bunch of flowers. A bunch of flowers. Find the necessary references and draw it. Looking at the medical references, I thought the internal organs were a thing of beauty. It didn't occur to me, or the writer, Bull would be horrified by the result. But we did get a slap on the wrist from the editor. Personally, I prefer less is more. What you don't see can be much more frightening than what you do.
Oh, he's another one for that camp. Oh, interesting. Yeah. As an artist, you can forget about how horrific. You can get absorbed in the beauty of what you're drawing, and you don't realize how horrible it really is. Especially if you're doing a lot of good work on it. So that's an interesting process when you do get caught up in, just trying to get everything as looking as real as possible or as perfect. I get these blood splatters on the wall just right, if I'm cutting through the neck, I'll need the skin peeling away from the blade, as just as realistically as possible, and the blood just starting to leak and spurt, and you don't realize, hang on, I'm drawing something that's actually quite horrific. You cross a line without even knowing. You can cross your own lines without even knowing. It's just fascinating.
And dot your I's.
Cross your T's and dot your I's. With scalpel blades. And pluck them out. So, next up we have Kim Luster. Okay. So, Kim comes in and she says... Of course, Kim, Iron Scarf is the artist behind what is Awfully Decent Fellows, sorry. Gene Joke does Light Bites and other amazing comics. Who haven't we mentioned? Bravo does Tales of SIG and Go a Viking and various comics related to that. Okay. So Kim Luster does The Good Walker now, I believe. That's her comic. And, of course, The God's Strain, which is a finished comic by her, which is really good. Okay, and she talks about, of all the line-crossing stuff mentioned, I feel I haven't shied away from any of it. I've just avoided being too gratuitous. But in a sad indictment of our times, I'm more nervous about depicting minorities, addressing hot political and cultural topics, etc., than I am about depicting a child molester. It's just so volatile these days, and so many on every side are just too reactionary and tribal about it. The child molester, sadly, isn't as likely to start a crap drawing war. Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
You can criticize child molesters all you like, because they're not going to come and say, "Oh my God, you should make fun of us." Nambler is going to attack your comic, start a big campaign against it. That would get you more readers if Nambler started protesting you. So yeah. Yay, a comic that doesn't like Nambler. So yeah. She makes a good point. Okay. So yeah, that's a good end piece. Our whole thing on this, don't you think?
Yep.
It's attacking from the other point of view. And that sort of ties into many of Tance's news posts and things about, your whole tribalism, this side or that side. If you cross those particular lines, you end up on a whole new battlefield that you didn't consider. So you got to be careful about that. I love that song. Da, 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 da. Oh my god. Good old Pat Benatar. She's the anthem of the drunk duck. Everything by Pat Benatar. All right. So yeah, we have covered the topic of crossing lines. Oh my god, White Lines, that's another song. White Lines.
White Lines.
Oh jeez. Alright, so it's a very case by case basis, which is what, Towns mentioned in the thing. There's no particular kind of oh my god, Pitt, that's disgusting.
He's crossing a line there.
Yeah.
That's right. That's over the line.
We don't want to see inside of you, Pitt. That's just gross.
Well,
All right, so all right. Oh damn it! All right, that's the end of the Quackast. This is Quackast number 385.
We crossed the line.
We crossed the line. Thank you very much for being all part of the Quackast, guys. It's been cool. All right.
Yay.
Bye bye.
Yay.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.